Hello, and welcome to Warhammer 40k's Grim History from Beyond. I am Zekthar.
And I'm Yuxin.
We are the chroniclers of all that was, and all that will be in the 41st millennium. We've seen the rise and fall of many empires. Yet this month, we are taking leave of the grim world of Warhammer and taking a vacation.
Right you are, Zekthar. This month we have traveled the strange world of Terran 42, or what the locals call it, Earth. We landed near the city known as Seattle to take in the sights and food of the city. Yet, while we are here, we will continue our walks.
Indeed, Yuxin. Yet we'll be taking a break from our normal historical chronicling. We figured that we'd let you, fine people of the galaxy, take a break as well, and discuss one of our favorite games, Dungeons and Dragons.
Quite right, brother. It is good to take a break away from the drudgery of life and simply play a fun game. Well, what are we going to discuss today?
Well, as you mentioned last week, we will be discussing the theater. More importantly, 3 shows that are about what we've been discussing through this whole vacation, Dungeons and Dragons.
Indeed, Zekthar. Shall we start chronologically?
Well, yes, let's.
In that case, we shall start with the 2000 Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh, I kind of forgot about that one. Do we really have to do that one? That one's
Oh,
pretty
yes,
bad.
we must.
Okay, fine.
Let me first explain the plot.
Okay, go for it.
So, the basic idea is you have, from the bad guys' point of view, first of all, they try to take control of dragons, but when that doesn't work, they try to take the power away from the Empress, who can also control dragons with their own staff. At the same time, we have the main character, who is a thief, and his buddy decide to try to ransack the Mage Academy.
I will mention here, they're pretty terrible at thievery.
Yes, they are.
Go ahead. They're supposed to be really good, but they're not.
On the flip side, the one of the advisors of the Empress has information on where to find another staff that will help control a different type of dragons. And so he's trying to decipher where the heck that will be when he gets caught and he starts being tortured by the bad guys, because, that's how things go in a predictable plot.
He doesn't get tortured very long. He pretty much dies almost instantly.
Yeah.
They threaten torture and then they kill him.
He reveals where the thing is and sends it to his apprentice, who grabs it and flees with the main hero and his buddy, coming across a dwarf.
Who's not much of
And
a dwarf.
to move things forwards, basically they're being hunted throughout this entire time as they're trying to hunt for, first off, for this ruby eye that will help them open a gate to get to this rod, or open a door to get to this rod. And then they end up giving up the rod to save, of course, one of the main characters, because once again, predictable plot.
Let me guess, Yuxin. In the end, it all works out, and the bad guys all die, and the good guys prevail.
Yes.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. Which is kind of saying something, because it actually had some decent actors. Okay, it had one decent actor in it. Jeremy Irons. You might remember him from Die Hard with a Vengeance. He was the bad guy. He was voice acted in The Lion King. He was Scar in all the Justice League movies and the Batman movies. He was Alfred. Well, okay, the ones that had what's his face? The guy who played Batman. Crap, Ben Affleck. So all the ones with Ben Affleck, Jeremy Irons was Alfred.
Right.
And he was also in Kingdom of Heaven. He plays a advisor to the King of Jerusalem. And then you have the only other guy that's really recognizable. There's a couple of, okay, so like, for instance, the dwarf, you would have seen him in Pirates of the Caribbean. He plays one of the kooky guys that always gets stuck with the person that parleys them. He's the fat one, not the skinny one.
Not the one with the wood eye.
Right, exactly. He's his buddy. And then the elf in it, she was also a side character in Walking Tall. She was Dwayne Johnson's sister.
Huh.
But other than that, and I can't forget, anyways, probably one of the worst actors ever, anyways, that was in this movie, Marlon Wayans. You'll remember him from the Scary Movies and the Scary Movies. he he's done a couple other things too that were god awful. He was in White Chicks. Honestly, out of the two of them, anyway, he's one of two brothers, and out of the two of them, he's the least talented. And you forgot to mention the plot. He actually dies,
Oh yeah.
and
Well,
honestly, that was the only good part of the movie, in my opinion. And he should have died earlier. He is so
well,
annoying in this movie.
there is that scene at the very end
What? Maybe
that
I
makes
just
no sense.
fallen asleep by that point. Did they bring him back? I didn't think they brought him back.
No, they all travel, and you're supposed to assume to this land that he's at, which I
Oh,
assume is what's supposed to make that scene make sense, where all of a sudden he's in the middle of a field after he dies.
okay. Yeah, I don't remember that, I guess. Um, we've already mentioned, anyways, this is a pretty terrible movie. But Yuxin, through the whole movie, was there any good parts that you remember?
Really, the soundtrack. That's about it. Oh, and actually, the main scene was okay. It wasn't horrible, but it wasn't great either.
Okay, you mentioned this yesterday that you thought that was one of the few good scenes, and I was like, I watched it, and I was like, I don't think this is really all that good either. Uh,
It's okay, but it's better than pretty much the rest of it.
yeah, I mean, the only thing that I could think of was that the scene where old Blue Lips is trying to get information out of the wizard apprentice, and it's actually acted fairly well, but it's just,
The graphics.
well, and the graphics weren't like the worst thing on the planet. I mean, they were pretty bad, but it was it was almost like they were gonna go with a different plot line for Blue Lips. Like he
And
was
then
just
they
like,
didn't. Yeah.
and then they didn't. Yeah, that was the problem. It's like, oh, maybe they'll develop his character, and then they never did.
Or
It's like,
maybe
oh,
he'll turn around and stab the bad guy in the back, or try to. Nah.
or something. Yeah. So, yeah, it was kind of almost like a wasted scene.
Kind of like the scene in the middle of the forest where they claim that they'll be able to catch up if they take this shortcut
Yeah, I,
when they're already at a castle.
I know. They showed him at this castle, and then they flash back to these guys like, we could catch up with them. And then they're like already late. They're already at the castle. It's like, well, you know where they're going to be. It's yeah, it was that scene didn't make any sense at all.
Yeah.
But now mind you, anyways, we've said, we've already mentioned this a couple times. It's a pretty terrible movie, but we're not the only ones that think this. It actually cost $45 million to make, and it made 34 million. So it was kind of a box office disaster. It lost money. It came out, like you said, in 2000. And we're going to kind of compare it with a couple of movies that we honestly really like and compare where they were better than this movie. And then we're also going to give some examples of movies that also had a very small budget, like Dungeons and Dragons did. I mean, let's start off with quite frankly, the special effects. The special effects in this movie were garbage. I mean, like real garbage. It came out in 2000, and Jurassic Park, which came out in what? It was 95, I think. Was it
Yeah.
95 or 93?
I want to say 95.
Oh, we'll go with 95 then. The graphics in that movie were just like, I mean, you really thought you were looking at a dinosaur. Meanwhile, these dragons they show in this movie
93.
93. Okay. So 93. So it came out 7 years beforehand. And
The graphics were better.
the graphics were better. They were 7 years older. And on top of that, I mean, they really looked like you were looking at a dinosaur. As opposed to this movie, these dragons, you just looked at it and you're like, wow, this is terrible. I mean, this is just straight up bad. It looks cartoony.
Or the
and
Beholders,
stitched together. Yeah.
which also irritated me.
What's that?
Which also irritated me.
No, what irritated you?
Well, at the Beholders, like Watch Dogs,
What?
the Beholders are in it.
I don't even remember the beholders in it, man. There was a beholder in it?
There were like 3 or 4. They were at the castle.
How big were they?
They weren't giant. They were like the size of a person.
Okay. Were they like baby beholders? Well, no, okay. So in D&D,
They
anyways,
probably
the
weren't
beholder,
supposed to be.
So D&D beholders are actually quite large, and they're one of the scarier monsters you can come in contact with.
And
Not
they're
only that, but they
intelligent.
never gather in groups. The
And they're
only thing the
intelligent.
beholder hates more than just about anybody is another beholder because they think that they're there to steal their stuff. Wow, I don't even remember that. I must have just given up on the movie by that point. How the castle scene was only like halfway through, right?
Yeah.
Well, I also watched it on YouTube. So it had
Okay.
commercials to it. So every time, anyways, that a commercial came on, I just lost more and more interest in it. But yeah. But yeah, like I said, if you're looking at the graphics that way, anyways, it's just significantly better, just anyways, on the special effects alone.
Okay, so another example, I guess, is Terminator 2, which had a bigger budget than Jurassic Park. By the way, Jurassic Park cost 63 million, ended up making 914 million.
Dang!
Yeah. Terminator 2 cost more, it cost 100, but still made 521 million, which is significant increase over negative.
Right.
The special
Ap-
effects when it came to Terminator 2 were really well done. The computer parts weren't as good, but they're still better than the D&D one by
yeah,
far.
that's true.
But they relied more on, and this is leaned very well into it, more of the special effects like the explosions and the sparks and that stuff.
So they actually used actual effects,
Yeah.
which they honestly, I think they could have done a lot of that, more of that in D&D.
Well, yeah.
I mean, just the first scene, anyways, with the blood running through. It's like, dude, you could go ahead and get some red dyed water or something, anyways, or something a little bit more,
It would
like
look better than where the heck that is. Uh,
that
yeah.
looked like the Blob in pancake form. But another couple of movies, by the way, that did better jobs, anyways, with their effects, that came out about the same time, or actually they're a little bit older, and cost about the same amount. One of which I think everybody has watched at this point, Toy Story.
Well, no, there isn't any sort of computer graphics on that at all. No.
No, nope, it was fantastic. And the graphics in it for the time period, if you go back and watch it, they still hold up. I mean, they're obviously, anyways. You can watch. It's kind of interesting with Toy Story, actually, because you can watch progressively the graphics get better as the years go by. Not only that, but if I recall right, each movie that came out after that, anyways, they put a whole boatload more money into it. In the original Toy
No.
Story, I think it cost about $50 million, and they ended up making like a boatload of money on it. So they're like, oh well, maybe we should invest in this. The other one that I know is one of your favorites is The Hunt for the Red October.
Yeah. That one didn't really have it had very little computer graphics, if any, really. The majority of it was special effects, or they also used actually miniatures, and they had it in a room, and they actually used smoke and other things to actually create the environment, and they're actually shooting it.
Mm-hmm. I think the torpedoes. I might be wrong about that, but I think the torpedoes are actually graphics.
Yeah, but other than that,
Well, you think that they actually use miniatures for the subs instead of a
no, I
computer?
know they did
Oh,
for
okay.
the nuclear sub. Yeah,
Oh, okay. Wow, they did a really good job with that then, because I always just thought it was just animated. Huh. Well, and obviously, movies aren't just about the special effects. I mean, a lot of people think that
right.
these days. You could just go ahead and ask Michael Bay, but it normally requires to have a really good movie. You should also have a very good script and a good plot. Also, I might mention anyway, something that will make or break a good movie is a soundtrack.
Right.
A good example of this actually is Jaws. Jaws has probably one of the most iconic soundtracks ever. And that movie wouldn't have been nearly as popular if they had like a terrible soundtrack to it. It
Well, the
would have been
same thing
garbage.
goes with pretty much anything that John Williams did.
Yeah. I
But
mean, yeah. If you want a good soundtrack, that's the guy to call. I mean, he did what? He's Star Wars, all the Star Wars, Indiana Jones, Jurassic Park, Jaws. Um,
E.T.,
Yep.
Um,
Close Encounter of the Third Kind. Oh, Schindler's List. Oh, geez, how can we forget Schindler's List?
yeah,
That's probably one of the most beautiful pieces of music ever. But getting back to like the script and the plot. So, as we kind of described with this plot, it was so easy anyways to see how this movie was going to turn out, which sometimes that's okay. You can get away with
yeah,
that sometimes. But you have to have at least anyways a good script, and you have to have your actors anyways buy into what it's doing, which means you also have to have decent direction to it. Now, let's take anyways the two movies that we were talking about before. Jurassic Park. It has it has a really great script to it. It was directed by Steven Spielberg. So, you know anyways that it's going to have good direction to it. And the plot was, I mean, it moved along, and it at this point anyways, because it's so famous, it seems like a pretty obvious plot. But and if you're looking at plots boil down to what? 7 different plots for every single thing that you watch
I I don't know.
or read that's fiction. I believe it's 7. Um, one of them, like for instance, a good example is like The Expedition or The Hero's Quest. That's probably one of the most famous ones. There's The Horror, which is, that's kind of self-explanatory too. But with Jurassic Park, anyways, they did a good job, anyways, just taking a simple plot like that and then adding a script to it that, I mean, they did to make the script was actually pretty easy because it came from a book, and the guy who wrote the book actually helped them write the script.
Yeah,
So
that
that kind of
helps.
helps. Michael Crichton. Now, Terminator 2 is a little bit of a different story, right?
One of the things about Terminator 2 is the fact that it was successful as a sequel, for one thing, which is sometimes very surprising.
Yeah,
You
that's
think
very
about it.
hard to do.
But in this case, it's because they start off. First of all, the main characters in it. One of them is named Sarah Connors, right? That's the character's name.
Yeah,
The mom. Yeah. So originally, her character was
Sarah
mild
Connor
in
from the first one.
comparison to this. This one, she's obviously grown quite a bit. She grows throughout the thing, which also helps. So she has more of a presence throughout the thing, even though she isn't like the main character. The main character is obviously Schwarzenegger because he is the Terminator. Uh,
I don't know. I think it's kind of the
but
same as like the first movie. I mean, the main character in both of them. Okay, I guess you could say they're both main characters. It's probably the
yeah,
best way of describing it. Because like in the first movie, he's the villain, so he's
well,
obviously a
yeah,
main character, and she is the main character on the other side. She's the one he's trying to kill.
well,
Well, yeah, I know there was also Michael Beans in there too. So there. I mean, you can have more than just one main character.
yeah.
Uh, and
Uh,
and in this one, anyways, it's definitely, anyways, they both kind of hold that role. I mean, Sarah Connor and then the Terminator. I mean, they
yeah,
are what the whole movie focuses around, other than the villain T-1000. Sorry, carry on.
yeah. Well, anyways, they make the character Sarah Connor really well written character, and then they write the other characters well. But for Schwarzenegger, since at the time he really wasn't that good at acting, just put it
What are you
that way,
talking about?
he
Nah.
he still did a really good job because he was, he's an action hero, basically.
Get to the chopper.
And so they shrunk down how many lines he had, and they're just almost sound bites throughout the entire thing.
Hasta la
Yeah.
vista, baby.
Yeah,
And then, what was the first one? Oh yeah, I'll be back.
yeah. The first one, and he drives a police car through the front. Yeah,
Yeah, just about. I think just about every single movie he's done, anyways. There's at least one quotable line in there.
but so it was written basically to cover. Well, obviously they were easily able to write for who those two people's roles are because they're bringing back from the first one. So they're able to cover their base, whereas in this one, they just went, okay, we're going to give you really bad scripts to begin with.
What?
There really isn't any growth or showing of growth
Oh,
throughout.
you're talking about Dungeons and Dragons now?
Yeah, now moving
Oh,
to
okay,
Dungeons and
okay.
Dragons.
You were talking about Terminator 2. I was like, wait,
No,
no.
moving back to comparing it with
Okay, there you go.
with Dungeons and Dragons, they go from like 0 to, oh, now this person's 100. Like, what happened? We don't know. We don't even give you any reference.
Honestly, the characters are so bad anyways. They didn't go from 0 to 100. They just went like 0 to 50. That's as good as they could get. I mean, I hear what you're saying. I mean,
Yeah.
throughout the first whole half of the movie, anyways, it's like they just kind of bumble around. And then the second half of the movie, they're like slightly better.
This isn't the Matrix. They don't just plug you into something.
That was brilliant, by the way the Matrix did it. You could just upload anyways, whatever you needed. That was such a MacGuffin. But anyways, so another couple good examples, anyways, of scripts and plot that are really good for lower budget films. Secondhand Lions.
Yeah.
If you haven't heard of it, it's a great movie. It's worth watching. It's got Michael Caine in it and Robert Duvall. I'm not going to give much away on it, but it's really about this kid who kind of comes into his own, and he's spending the summer with his two uncles. And there's like an adventure story in there too, but it is very low budget. There's not like a whole lot of like action or
Yeah. Because it mainly takes place just at this
a farm. Yeah,
the majority of it, anyways.
where they grow nothing but corn, but not on purpose. And I know, anyways, I mean, like for you, anyways, one of your favorite movies of all time is The Hunt for Red October. And if I recall right, they did the same thing kind of Jurassic Park did for their script, right? Because I mean, it's based off of a book.
Necessarily, because I believe the way it went is they bought the rights for it, and I noticed that later on when they did it for the following books of the series. By the way, it's based off of actual series done by Tom Clancy.
Yeah, it's the
Jack Ryan
right?
Series.
Jack Ryan, which has what in it? It's The Hunt for the Red October, Red Rabbit. I want to say.
I want to say yes, but they went from Hunt of the Red October immediately to Patriot Games and Clear and Present Danger. And
did they do Without Remorse?
No, they didn't do that one.
Oh,
Without Remorse is the one that follows
John Kelly.
Yeah.
Okay. No, no. The other one that they did. Okay, so yeah, that one, and don't watch that one. That one was terrible. Honestly, what they should have done is they just should have given it a different name, and probably most people wouldn't have had as much of a problem with it. But it literally just gives the title of the name, and then it just takes the story that everybody has read and just abandons it right at the beginning. So it's kind of like, why'd you call it this?
So it's kind of like the Jack Ryan movie, where all they had to do is change the name.
Well, okay,
pretty much.
Are you talking about the one with Chris Pine?
Yeah.
Okay, that one I have a little bit more of an understanding for, because they just called it Jack Ryan. So it was
Tom Clancy on there.
Well, yeah, because it's based off of his characters.
But is it really?
Yes, it is. It's based off of Jack Ryan. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's not any of the stories, anyways, that he wrote, but it's like the new show, anyways, Jack Ryan. Yeah, none of this stuff Tom Clancy wrote about, but they're using his characters.
I could talk about this for a long time, but
I know you could. I would love to
going to move on to prevent
the other one that I forgot, that we almost forgot about, anyways, that did turn into a movie that also has to do with Jack Ryan is The Sum of All Fears.
Yeah,
which is actually one that I'll go back and watch every once in a while. It's pretty good. But what made The Hunt for Red October stand out to you so much compared to the rest of the ones that they did that were based on the Jack Ryan series done by Tom Clancy?
I think it was probably, well, I never actually read all of Hunt for the Red October, to be honest, because of the fact that almost all of the Russians have, I know this is horrible, but I couldn't keep track of them because they all have like their last name and the first name are so close in my mind that I couldn't keep track of who was who.
They're all Wachowskis.
Or end in OV or Sergey. I mean,
Sergey. Yeah. Oh, okay, so like, okay, in defense, anyways, if I recall right, Sergey is like someone from the United States being called John.
Yeah.
It's one of the most common names, I think.
But so sorry if I offended anybody from Russia or
I don't think you did offend anybody. It's like Smith.
it's
You know
just
how many
hard for me to
Smiths are
keep
out here?
track of it if they're like the names are so close together
Yeah.
or for some reason I can't just adjust to them. So it's like, okay, I can't continue reading this. It was written to match the actual characters that were created by Tom Clancy. That's one of the things. Another thing is you got great actors that were in it. James Earl Jones,
Yeah, we've talked about him.
um,
He's a great actor.
Sean Connery.
Yes, playing a Russian, playing
I
a
think
Russian captain.
Tim Curry was in there too.
Uh-huh.
It also had the guy that was in Star Wars. What's his name?
The guy that was in Star Wars.
Yeah, I mean not Star Wars,
Which
Jurassic
one?
Park.
Oh, Jurassic Park.
I
Yeah,
mean
Sam
Jurassic
Neill.
Park. Sam Neill.
I was like, which one? You already said James
No,
Earl
there's John
Jones.
Williams. No, no, there's John Williams one. Uh,
Yeah. No, I think he actually did the soundtrack for The Hunt for Red October too. Now that I think about it.
I don't know about that, but
Okay, it might
um,
not. No, I think it was Alan Silverstein who did The
and
Hunt for
it
Red October.
had I believe Scott Glenn. I want to say that's
Yeah,
who that person is.
I honestly think Scott Glenn's actually a very underrated actor, but
Yeah. Well,
um,
let's face it, the roles that he's had over the years also have been, let's face it, stellar roles to play.
what do you mean? He was Emmett in Silverado, one of the greatest westerns of all time,
Yeah, I'm aware of that one.
and he was in Backdraft. He was Axe in
What?
Backdraft. Yeah, he's the
I
main
don't
bad
remember.
guy.
I don't remember that, but okay.
You'll have to go back and watch it again. It's a fantastic movie.
Anyway,
Anyways, you're
great
kind of
script,
moving into
great
what our
actors
next
that follow the script.
right. So you
Also, great soundtrack.
so you're moving into the concept that we're going to talk about next, which is actors. And actors are really actually what make things roll. But the funny part about Dungeons and Dragons is okay. I think Marlon
They're
Wayans
the
is probably
perfect
one of the worst
example
actors
of
ever.
how a script can screw up an actor.
Right. And because I mean Jeremy Irons is actually I think a fairly good actor. But in this movie, he did not do a good acting job. It was actually pretty terrible, which I think has to do a lot with the directing. So, and this also kind of begs the question, anyways, of what does, in your opinion, Yuxin, what makes a good actor?
Somebody who's able to actually play the role that they're given to the best of their ability and be successful at it.
Okay, so
On the other hand, like you said, Jeremy Irons, I think, is a good actor. It's just he was given a bad script and bad directing.
the thing that I think makes Jeremy Irons' work in this so bad is just simply because he's so over the top compared to everybody else that's like, I guess, trying other than Marlon Wayans, who's trying to take this I think seriously. See, well, no, actually, you stop and look at it. I think everybody's acting over the top throughout the whole thing, but it doesn't make any sense for the movie
Yeah,
unless they were deciding that this is going to be a B film. But if you were going to do that, then you wouldn't have spent $45 million on it,
right.
and you wouldn't have picked up Jeremy Irons anyways to play the bad guy for it. you would have you would have grabbed Joe Blow off the street. But the reason I ask about that is because I mean, one of the movies that you've been talking about, Terminator 2, you've got Arnold Schwarzenegger in it, who, in my opinion, anyways, isn't really a good actor. I mean, don't get me wrong, the roles he's good at picking roles. Let me put it that way. Does that
Yeah.
make sense? I mean, the
I
roles that
think
he picks
he's a
are,
good actor for what roles he chooses, like I said.
which to me, anyways, means that he's not a good actor. It means he could do the same thing over and over and over again. That's not acting. Acting, you should be able to have like a whole, you know, you should be able
No,
to in
it is
one movie
acting.
be the
It's just
superhero, and then
not
the other should
a
be a villain, and then the next one, anyways, maybe you're just a cook. You know, you should be able to, you know, have a range to you, not just simply I am Arnold. Nyah. Or his competitor in the 80s. Oh, what's his face?
Sylvester Stallone.
But with going back to Arnie, anyways, how do you think, anyways, the director really helped him along with the script, anyways, to keep him kind of in his lane?
Well, one of the things that made it easier is the fact that you have mentioned this to me before, Zexar, the fact that when he was originally acting, he was pretty wooden actor to begin with.
Yeah.
And one of the wonderful things about being the Terminator is you do not need to have really any emotion whatsoever.
Hmm.
So that helps.
Wow, we spent a lot of time, anyways, talking about bad movies. Actually, we spent a lot of time talking about good movies and why this one was not a good movie. Real quick before we move on, do you have any last thoughts on this movie? Anything that else you'd like to point out?
It is one of the few shows where it gives you an appreciation of actually finding the right appearance of actors also. The only reason why I mention that is because they have a dwarf that's the same height as one of the regular humans.
So what you're saying is they did a bad job of that too?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sure we could find more things that were terrible about this, but we have to move on. So let's move on, anyways, to the movie actually that we both watched recently that had to do with D&D that we both actually really liked, which was Honor Among Thieves.
Also titled Dungeons and Dragons. But
Yes, Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves. The characters in it, I can't remember any of their names, but the actors that did them, they spent a little bit more time and effort on this, I think. Like, for instance, Chris Pine's in it, Michelle Rodriguez, who plays this barbarian, and Chris Pine plays this bard thief. Hugh Grant is in it, and he plays Hugh Grant. And I can't remember the wizard's name, but you would recognize him from Jurassic
Pokemon.
World, the second one, which is what, Fallen Kingdom. He's the techno wizard that plays the panicky guy, anyways, that like shrieks like a little girl when the Baronix shows up.
What?
You don't remember that?
No.
I thought you would remember that because that's like your favorite dinosaur of all time.
Wait.
When the Baronix, anyways, is coming through like this cavern and lava's all coming down, he turns around, takes one look at this thing, and just goes, "Ah!"
Um,
Well, anyways, it was
I'm
a
not
funny part. Go ahead.
sure. If I saw that, I saw it once. So
Well, just look it up on YouTube, anyways. Just go back and don't go watch the whole movie. The whole movie was not very good, but that one scene was entertaining. Let's put it that way.
or some people will know him from Pokemon Detective Pikachu.
Right, and he plays the main character in that, right?
I assume. I never saw that.
Okay. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he plays the main character. Oh, well, other than Pikachu, who's done by Ryan Reynolds. You should probably watch it. It's Deadpool in the Pokemon world. But and then and then you meet a halfling who's crap. It's the same guy who does Rocket Raccoon.
Bradley Cooper.
Yeah, Bradley Cooper. And that was a surprise. I didn't know he was going to be in the movie. And he does a pretty good job.
Another short character role.
Yeah, another short character role. And they did the same thing that they did in the first D&D, where the plot line was actually fairly simple. Go ahead and tell the people, anyways, Yuxin, what the plot line was.
Okay, so the plot line of this one actually first starts off in a dungeon. Basically, Chris Pine's character is explaining how everything went wrong and how they ended up becoming criminals originally. And basically, his wife was killed by red mages. And so he decided to, after getting extremely drunk, teaming up with a barbarian, and they started committing crimes. For some reason, they decided to take his daughter along with him.
Oh, hang on. Not just crimes in general. I mean, they kind of portray much of a Robin Hood concept.
Yeah.
They rob from the rich to,
Cool.
but instead of to
The
feed
first
the poor.
time, though, the first
themselves.
time, the way that they mention it is basically they broke into a jewelry store. So at the beginning, yeah, they weren't, but then they progressed.
Okay, but they're thieves. When you say they go out and do crimes, they're thieves. It's
Yeah.
not like they go out and murder people and they were like, "Oh, we did that. We're criminals."
No.
No. It's just mainly thievery.
So the way that they got caught is because there's a tip that the thief, aka Hugh Grant, plays. There's a tip that there is a tome of reawakening to bring somebody back to life once, and so he himself, Hugh Grant, and the team, which also has both this barbarian and Justice Smith, aka the guy that's in Detective Pikachu, end up paying out to retrieve this thing and end up getting caught.
No, you got to. This is actually very important. The only people that do get caught are the barbarian and the bard.
Right. Everybody else escapes. The bard who actually left the daughter behind on this one told Hugh Grant's character to take care of her and protect her. The sorcerer and the wizard was able to escape. Hugh Grant's character brought in a sorcerer, which you find out later is a red mage, and they were both colluding to begin with.
Right. And so the start of this movie, he's telling this whole story, and then they escape. And they go try to pick up his daughter again, and it turns out that Hugh Grant's character has lied to her this entire time, and he's kind of and it turns out anyways that he planned on betraying these two the entire time. So then he tries killing them, and then they escape, and then the rest of the movie is them trying to get his daughter back.
Oh, correction. He doesn't try killing them. He originally wants them to be sent back to prison. It's the red mage that says
correct.
kill them.
Right. But regardless, they do escape, and the rest of the movie is them trying to get the daughter back. Now, we could probably tell you how the rest of the movie, line for line, anyways, ends up going because we like the movie so much, but we'd like you guys to go see it for yourself. It was really that good of a movie. We're not going to tell you how it ends. And it is a very good movie, but honestly, Yuxin, what do you think, anyways, makes this movie a good movie? I mean, to me personally, I think one of the things that they did, and they did it so much better than the original D&D, was they didn't take themselves too seriously. It is a comedy of sorts, and it's kind of a comedy action, and they understand that the normal person who doesn't want or doesn't play D&D isn't going to get a whole lot of things that are in it. The people that do play D&D are going to be like, "Huh, I remember having to fight one of those displacer beasts." And everybody else is like, "What's that?" I'm like, "Well, it's that thing," And the comedy in and of itself is fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Yuxin, and explain why you like it so much.
Okay, one of the things I like is the chemistry between all the characters. They all mesh well. Like, for example, normally you wouldn't think a barbarian and a bard would mesh at all. You would think, well, they're complete opposites. Barbarian is just I want to hit things. Bard's just like I'm more eloquent, charismatic.
Well, then again, if I recall right, anyways, you were a monk, a half orc monk, and you got along fine with the bard halfling that you were teamed up with.
Anyways, the difference, even though that they're different in contrast, when you first meet them together, they mesh well because it's sort of like, yes, they're drastically different from each other, but together they make a better group.
Right.
And so they can kind of feel where each other are at and how to deal with that. Like, for example, the barbarian meets her ex, and then after this one scene, you can see that she's, depressed about it. And so the bard knows that. And so he chooses like the perfect song, that they can all they can join in together and lift her spirits and whatever.
Yep. A drinking song, because that's what they're there for.
And then that continues with all the characters. They all are able to act well together. Just the characters themselves, and it seems like the actors themselves also have a great chemistry with each other.
Mm-hmm.
It's always a good thing to have when you have a movie with multiple main characters.
Well, and I think you've actually touched on something that's kind of interesting. Normally, when you're looking at movies, one of the things that you look at is, like, for instance, character growth, right?
Right.
And in this movie, there isn't a whole lot of character growth for any of these people. But the thing that I find interesting that what does make this movie cool is that as a unit they start to grow together.
Yeah.
So it's more like they actually get closer, which in and of itself is all kind of entertaining to watch. I will say the one thing that they all seem to have in common though is that they're all kind of snarky. Does that make sense?
Uh,
Okay, which
I
one's
don't know.
not
I just
snarky?
think the barbarian's more simplistic than anything else.
Ah, okay. No, I think she's snarky too. I mean, one of my favorite lines is it's just like a beer for you and your wife. Oh no. Oh God, no. Him? He's horrible. He's ugly looking. What about me is ugly? Your lips. Huh? You know,
Yeah.
that whole scene is just entertaining. It's just back and forth, just kind of
Yeah.
but yeah, and like you said, anyways, that chemistry. And and I think that's really what makes this movie is they become closer together as a unit. And like you said, it looked like the actors themselves actually had a good time doing this,
Yeah.
which I think is really portrayed in their acting. Now here's the hard question, Yuxin. I know you love the movie, and I did too. What do you think they did bad in the movie?
Um, I really don't think there is anything that made it bad. I mean, the only way that they could improve it is by adding to it, but then that also would destroy the pacing, which is one of the better
Mhm.
aspects of this is it's paced really well so you don't go, well, this is extremely depressing in this area, or when is this
Right.
going to end here? It
It never
just
bogs
flows
down.
well.
Yeah.
It's not
Oh no, I
like we
wholeheartedly agree
don't
with you.
need this extra information. I mean, it's important information. I got that, but it's slowing down the entire thing.
Yeah. Which to me, anyways, would be kind of interesting. Did you pick up the actual copy of it?
What do you mean the actual copy of it?
Well, I watched it on a streaming service here in
Oh,
Turn 42. Did you actually pick up the actual product?
yeah.
Oh, just out of curiosity, did they have deleted scenes in that?
I actually haven't time to check.
Oh, okay. Well, it'd be kind of interesting to see what they actually did delete. Because anyways, a lot of this stuff anyways gets cut on the floor anyways, and like you said, the pacing of this movie is actually another thing that really is great about it. Like I said earlier, anyways, it just doesn't take itself too seriously. The comedy in it is great. It's a lot of one-liners, one-ups, quips. There is a essence of slapstick. Now, I think you'll agree with me, Yuxin. Okay, Yuxin, what was your favorite funny moment of the whole movie? I'm thinking it's
Um,
probably the same thing that it was mine, but I might be wrong.
I can guess what yours is. Mine, I am not 100% sure what it would be.
May I take a stab at what I think yours would be?
I think one of the ones is the one that you're thinking of.
Yeah, and I'll get into that. But I think one of your favorites is is where they keep digging up the corpses.
Ah, yes. You have 5 questions. I'm not talking
Yeah.
to you, okay? Okay. Why did you answer that way?
Uh, and then when they dig up the one guy, anyways, he just slipped and fell in the bathtub.
Yeah,
It's like, you weren't part of the battle? No. But
that was Sven.
my brother. Or they
My
get to
brother.
and they have to ask 5 questions. The first guy, the guy asked the wrong questions. The second one, the guy didn't know all of them, and then he's like, "All right, let's go dig up another one." Oh, wait a minute. We've only asked him 3 questions. Okay. It's like, well, we kind of have to ask him a couple more so he can go back to being dead. What's your favorite animal? Cat. What's your favorite food? Oats. No, wait, apples. Poof. Okay, good. Yeah, that whole scene was just it reminded me so much of like a D&D campaign of the DM just like completely screwing with with the team, which is
Yeah.
you can get away with sometimes as a DM, and it's kind of fun. My personal favorite though scene is where the bard is supposed to the wizard is using the bard as a distraction, and it's a what do they call it?
Illusion spell?
Yeah, it's an illusion spell. And and he's actually distracting the guards really well, and then all of a sudden the wizard gets his foot stuck, so he starts losing his concentration, and then the image just goes completely kaplooey.
Yeah.
It's worth looking up. It's a great one. Now, we don't have a whole lot of time for this last one, but we do have to get into probably the one that is actually most lore oriented, which is a TV show that came out, oh, what, 2 years ago? And the second
I
season
think
came out
so.
last year, which is Vox Machina. The synopsis of it is that okay, so real quick, for me to get into the plot, you kind of have to know who these actors and characters are. And Yuxin, you know these guys better than anybody else. Well, okay, maybe not better than anybody else, but better than me. So take it away.
Better than anybody else on this Fox. Oh,
Yeah,
so you mean
there we go. Yes,
better than
yes,
you?
that is a correct
Okay.
statement. Take it away, Yuxin.
Okay, so for those who don't know what Critical Role is, it is a group of people that do D&D campaigns, and all of them are known voice actors. And so in their first campaign was called Vox Machina, and so they had characters like one of them was a Goliath, the half giant like creature. The half giant or Goliath, for those who play D&D, his name was Grog, and is played by somebody by the name of Travis Willingham, who those who have seen anime, one of the things he's most noted for is playing Roy Mustang, I believe his name, in Full Metal Alchemist. For those who don't watch anime, you may recognize him from pretty much any animated Marvel Thor character.
Oh, he plays
He is
Thor.
the voice of Thor.
Wait a minute. Hang on half a second. All the ones that I remember, anyways, is Matt Wolf.
Which was how long ago?
Oh, that's a good point. Well, there was still cartoons. Tales of Asgard.
Avengers Assemble. Travis Willingham did do Thor.
Oh, he did? Wow, he sounds a lot like Matt Wolf then.
And Hulk and Agents of Smash. Also, for those who play Sonic, he did the voice of Knuckles.
Okay. But all these guys, anyways, that you're gonna all these actors, anyways, you can find them on the YouTube channel Critical Role, right?
Yes.
Okay. So yes, and they're all though voice actors as well. And they've done a bunch of different stuff as voice actors in cartoons and animations and video games, right?
Right.
Okay. So could you just let us know anyways which one is which for the characters in Vox Machina?
Okay, so the one who does the most characters is Matt Mercer, and that's because he was originally in the Vox Machina campaign, the DM. So
right.
Matt Mercer does a lot of voices because he was also the DM for the original Vox Machina campaign. So he did the voices for all the NPCs. You have, like I said, Travis, who played Grog the Half Giant, aka Goliath. You had Sam Riegel. He plays Scanlan, a halfling. You have Marisha Ray, who played Kalith, who is a druid. I want to say elf druid.
Yeah.
You
by
have
the way, real quick, Yuxin, I was going to ask you about that. She's got horns. She is, but she looks like an elf. I thought the only character that you could pick, anyways, that had horns was a okay. There's a dragonkin, or dragonborn, and then tieflings.
Are you sure that isn't a crown?
Okay, you might be right. That might be some weird looking crown thing. I'll have to go back. I watched some of it earlier today, but and the more, yeah, I think it's more probably like a helm or something like that, or a, yeah. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Then you have Liam O'Brien, who plays the male twin of the half elves, Vex Ilden. I never focus on the last name.
I don't think they ever say their last name. I think they just go with Vax, and
rarely do they ever. Then the female twin is Vex, done by Laura Bailey. And you have Ashley Johnson, who plays Pike Trickfoot.
Who's one of my favorites.
The Paladin.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have Taliesin Jaffe, who plays Percival Deirolo III. He has a much longer name, but we'll just shorten it down to that.
Yeah, he's probably one of my least favorite characters.
the human fighter who has guns.
Yeah, fighter's a relative term there, Chief. Anyways, yeah, and they're all from Critical Role, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and real quick before I get into the plot of this, what started Critical Role? Just give us a little bit of chronicling, anyways,
If
brother.
I remember correctly, actually, it first started as just a one shot on one of the people's birthdays. And so, for example, the Scanlan character, Sam Riegel was just like, okay, what's pretty much the most useless character you can have? And they're like, well, a bard halfling. Okay.
My apologies to all those barred halflings out there.
A
Sorry,
halfling or
James.
just no, I think he's a halfling.
I think he's a gnome. Okay, what's okay? It depends. Is the paladin a gnome or is she a halfling?
I don't know. Hold on.
Okay, well he's looking.
Okay, so he is no, he is a gnome.
Okay,
Correction. He is a gnome, and Pike Trickfoot's a gnome.
right. Because I think halflings are a little bit taller and they don't have nearly as pointy ears. They're kind of pointy, but not as pointy. Anyways, the whole plot of this show is, well, it actually goes through a bunch of different cycles. And if I recall right, Euxin, this is like old stuff. This is like old campaigns that they went through, and they just scripted it and then voice acted it, right?
To the best of their abilities.
Okay, so you can kind of tell, and it makes the flow kind of interesting. First off, real quick, this is actually a show. This is not a movie. So they
No.
don't have like a 2.5 hour like time limit. They can actually spread stuff out, which makes it a little bit, easier to work with. And I think you said anyways that these characters that Critical Role used was over what, a 3-year campaign?
It was like 3.5 years, I think.
Yeah. So they still have to kind of scrunch some stuff down, and it makes it kind of a little the flow of it a little bit choppy. So, like for instance, the first 2 episodes are really about them fighting this blue dragon, and then it just randomly moves on anyways to, and it's not like it randomly, they do tie it together, but it's very loose.
Yeah, and you can.
Ties. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just about to say you can see in there's a couple of scenes where it's like, okay, I know that there had to have been a very long conversation here because of the change of a character's attitude,
Yeah.
but they just didn't have time, so they changed it to like a 5 minute thing, where it's probably like a half hour to an hour.
Right. Which you kind of have to do because I mean all these episodes were also what, 25 minutes?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then it moves on anyways to kind of Percival's backstory and him trying to retake his kingdom from these 2 vampires and save his sister. And that takes up most of the first season. And then the second season starts with, remember how there was this blue dragon at the very beginning of the first season? Well, all of his buddies showed up at this kingdom and they take it over. All these dragons.
Mm.
What? Go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, they don't really mention that first dragon. The other dragons don't really mention it at all.
Right, but at the same time, they say actually after the end of the second episode, I believe it was, like we believe that he was working anyways. That there was some other plot anyways that was supposed to take place, and it turns out that, and then they go on this like side quest that has to do with Percival, and then at the end of it, in the first part of the second season, we figured out, oh yeah, this was that other plot from the first 2 episodes. The dragon showed up. Yes. And then it's them. The second season, I think, actually did a better job of following kind of one path, which I kind of liked more. Yeah. It was literally, if I recall right, anyways, just trying to kick the dragons out, right?
Right.
Right. And I don't think that they actually succeeded in getting the red dragon out, right?
I think
he's still there.
It ended. I have like one episode left of it, but I'm pretty sure it just ends with them killing one of them so far.
Well, I know that they end up killing the black dragon,
the acid one.
Yeah. Oh, I will say in the second season, one of my favorite things is where Grog he gets the sword that like turns him into this like awesome warrior, but it's making him forget who's friend and foe. and he ends up stabbing like his best friend.
Pike.
Cleric's name, Pike. Thank you. I was going to say Percy. I'm like, no, that's not right. I know it starts with a P. Pike. So he freaks out about it. So he breaks the sword. And when he breaks the sword, what ends up happening is that it sucks out all the life out of him pretty much. So he's originally, like this giant Goliath barbarian dude. And then after he does this anyways, he's like this twinky guy who could barely walk. And the two gnomes have to actually drag him to I believe it's her grandfather, right? Pike's grandfather.
Great grandfather.
Oh, great grandfather. Yeah. And just that whole scene of him just being like, why? It's these two.
I'd rather be a corpse, a dead one.
And the great grandfather, by the way, the voice actor who did that is Henry Winkler. For those of you, anyways, who don't do anything about D&D, he is the Fonz. Okay, we are running out.
Who's been alive that long?
Yeah. So real quick though, let's kind of Yuxin run through kind of the pros and cons here. Let's start with the pros. To me, anyways, the animation is fantastic. It's very well animated. It's almost like a blend between an anime and something that was done in the United States, which I always find interesting. Very much like what Marvel does with their actually
DC.
Thank you. The DC cartoons, which if you haven't watched any of those, you should go watch some of them. They're awesome. But it's got a good mix anyways of just kind of like that goofy anime kind of thing. But then it's also the boldness, I guess, of the colors of US animation, which I find actually blend really well if it's done right. If it's done wrong, it looks god awful. But they did a very good job with it. What's your pro, Yuxin?
Well, it's kind of in contradiction to the con, but at the same time, it doesn't. I think the way that's built with what they have, they spread it out well enough so it isn't like, there's some of those shows where it's like, okay, we're going to progress to give you, all this information, and then we'll try to tie everything up of the season in 2 episodes. It's like,
Right.
we'll have everything happen in the last 2 episodes out of this 12-episode season. It's like, why do you have all this build up then if there's
So if that's the case anyways, how does this contrast with your con?
the
Well, it is your
con
con.
that I have is the fact that, and we mentioned this before, is the fact that they're taking material from something that's 3.5 years long and they're trying to condense it into seasons that only have 25-minute long episodes.
So
You
like
can
what I
see
was
that every once in a while. It's like, okay, this was probably better hearing it from the original context because it's stretched out longer, but it's done well enough that it still flows. It just isn't, you just know that there's substance there that might have made it better.
So like I was saying before, anyways, about the flow being a little bit choppy. That's kind of what you're talking about. Okay. I mean, like for instance, just out of the blue, Vex is the male elf, right?
I think that's Vax.
Vax, yeah, okay, Vax, where he just randomly, anyways, becomes like this messenger of death, and it's not like he randomly becomes it. It's like
champion of the Raven.
Yeah, okay, fine, whatever you call it, same difference. But and it does there is a flow to it, but because there have so many other storylines that are going, it seems kind of choppy. And I bet if you actually like spread it out even more, like you said, over like 3.5 years, it flows a whole lot better. But you can't really do that.
Yeah.
I will say my only real con with it, okay, I'm being very critiquing here on it. And quite frankly, I really did actually like it. I thought the voice acting was very well done. It's got a solid script. The soundtrack was pretty good, and the action was great. The thing, though, that I honestly didn't like about it was, and this is a problem with a lot of adult animated shows, like the first 2 or 3 episodes, they do on purpose to be like incredibly graphic. And I think they do that anyway so that people realize that this isn't for kids. It's that whole concept of like, oh, it's a cartoon. We can show my kid. It's like, no. As long as you've watched the trailer, you should realize that this isn't for kids.
Yeah.
And so they, in my opinion, anyways, they kind of go really over the top on the first couple episodes with that, and then they kind of rein that back in, and then you get more of a storyline. But like I just rewatched the first couple episodes again, and now that I'm kind of expecting it, it's not nearly as bad because you kind of got hit by it already. But yeah, that's just kind of my 2 cents. Okay, real quick, anyways, Yuxin, what are your final thoughts? Did you like it or did you hate it, or what was your thought process?
I would say I kind of liked it,
Okay.
but that's because one of the things, yeah, I also had that problem with the first two episodes where it's like, okay, really? And for me, I prefer to have a lot less language utilized in
You mean
cartoon.
foul language, correct? Because I've always known that you, Yuxin, like the common tongue, but it's it's those foul four-letter words that you've always kind of had a problem with.
Yeah,
Me, on the other hand, as long as it's useful. Okay, I think you'll agree with me too. Anyways, that it,
that's one of the problems that I have with a lot of shows is where it's like, we'll just throw that in there. It doesn't match with anything that actually makes sense,
yeah,
except for just to throw out a curse word.
right. And getting back to anyways, we were kind of talking about those first couple episodes. They do that. A lot of times they actually do that on purpose. For instance, if you want to go from a PG-13 movie to an R movie, it's like, well, we got to slap in a couple more F bombs because we want that R rating, which to me, anyways, is always kind of seems silly. But I mean, I can't think of any movies off the top of my head, but I know that there are actually quite a few movies, anyways, where it was just kind of like, okay, it didn't need to be rated R, but they wanted it to be rated R, so they like threw in a couple of F bombs. Well, I hate to say it, Yuxin, but our vacation is drawing to a close.
Indeed, Zekdar, yet even though I enjoyed our time on Turn 42, I do wish to get back home.
Really? I thought he would have begged to stay just a little bit longer. There's so much that we could study about these strange humans on this wonderful planet known as Earth.
Well, that is true. I miss my old comfy chair, the warm fireplace, and my books. While the great creator built you to be inquisitive and adventurous soul, he made me more of a homebody. And while I find joy in the unknown, I find more joy in my books.
You speak reason, brother. And that is truly what makes us such a great team. Very well. We will take a leave of this Earth. And when we get back next week, we'll discuss one of your favorite Astartes groups. I speak, of course, of the Salamanders.
That sounds wonderful. I can't wait. We can't tell people where Vulcan is.
Of course not. The mighty Primarch has sworn us to secrecy.
I'm glad you remember. But we must be off.
Indeed, Yuxin. We have quite a ways to go. And for those of you listening, we will be back next week to discuss the Salamanders. Until then, like, subscribe, or follow. And as always, this is Zekthar.
And Yuxin, signing off.